Okay, so this question is, you've said that the experience of kensho is sudden, spontaneous, and cannot be cultivated. In your own experience, and in knowing others who have experienced this, are there any causes or conditions, circumstances? Actually, I just saw that the connection went unstable. So I'm going to repeat that. Kensho means something like seeing original nature, seeing your own original nature. So even in that phrase itself, you can see that in a sense, there must not be special conditions to it, in a sense, because it's an original nature, original to all of us. And in fact, of course, original to all creation, so to speak, to all that exists. And it is to see that. That's what it means, really. It means to see that all phenomena share a single original nature. So if that's the case, then how could it be subject to, particular causes and conditions and circumstances or personal characteristics? So that's on one side. On another side, it's perfectly clear that, not all of us have had a really strong sudden awakening experience. We can read about them, they're known about, they're no longer really in the province of esoteric religion, and in a sense they never were, because they are seeing something intrinsic to who and what we are. But nevertheless, it doesn't seem like just everybody's always having them all the time. Not at all. I'd say for most of us, it's rare if we have more than a handful of really strong kensho experiences in a lifetime. I would say that's rare. Although the rider to that would be that doing long, diligent practice wears thin the veil between sort of non-awakened and awakened experience. And we're hoping that in the end that veil will not just wear away, but it will be realized that it was never there in the first place. But without getting to that, I wanted to stay on this matter of like, well, what about this causes and conditions and circumstances or personal characteristics that may associate with this experience? I mean, you've probably heard there's one piece of wisdom going that you read, I've read in various places, that awakening is an accident, and practice makes us accident prone. So if there are causes and conditions that are more pertinent to it, the primary one has got to be practice. It's sitting diligently, regularly. In the Zen view, the sitting alone isn't enough. You've got to have some amount of community of sitting, like we have right now, and you've also got to have some amount of guidance. And that could be from different sources, such as, listening to talks, reading books, but somewhere along the way, you've probably got to have some one-on-one guidance from a hopefully reliable and ethically sound and endorsed, sanctioned guide. Meaning endorsed or sanctioned by our other guides who were in their turn endorsed and sanctioned. It's not a perfect system, but it's better to have some amount of well, what could we call it? Quality control, you know, at least a bit of it. So practice in those conditions, and you know, what else is there? Well, from our Zen point of view, there's koans. There's the first koan Mu. Mu has the most extraordinary, baffling track record of helping people to get some glimpse of what this is all about. I find it utterly baffling still. I've seen it happen a number of times, and I don't really understand it at all, because it's just a little syllable that we don't even say out loud. We just say it to ourselves in silence, Mu. But somehow, if we trust it, if we not just trust it intellectually, I mean, if we entrust ourselves to it, if we sort of, in a sense, invest ourselves in the practice of Mu, it can have remarkable effect on us. You know, but again, of course, it's not. It can never be predictable. This matter of kensho can never be predictable, I don't think. You know, this would be on the sort of levels I was talking about. This would be on the fourth level, kensho. And I think in some way the other three levels are cultivatable and sort of influenceable. They really are. They must be. I mean, because, you know, we can go from being, you know, quite dysfunctional, you know, anxious, addictive, compulsive, and disorderly in our lives. Through practice, we can become much less so, much more peaceful and happier, all without kensho. You know, by doing our diligent mindfulness practice, cultivating our loving awareness, by perhaps getting a little more sense of beholdenness to something greater than ourselves. And that doesn't have to be religious. You know, all kinds of ways in which we can acknowledge our indebtedness, our infinite indebtedness. I mean, it really is infinite, almost is too weak a word. I mean, really it's absolutely infinite indebtedness that we, each of us, have, and acknowledging that and having ways of sort of, you know, in some way expressing our appreciation, our gratitude, and to that, and our humility before that. All of that is very, very helpful, actually, in many ways, because we're loosening the hold on our sense of self, loosening the hold on life, really, that we imagine we can have. We can't really, but we imagine we can. And then, but that's doable. You know, that is actually somewhat under our own sway. And then that third level, I was just touching a little bit on it in our sit, where I was, you know, opening up to this greater sense of awareness that is not just confined to the body. That's very sweet, and you don't need kensho for that. Kensho is the one big piece that is sort of the great fact, the great mystery. And, you know, in a sense, we can't go there. We can only drop ourselves and find that we're there. And that dropping of self can't be done by the self. You know. So yeah, I think I've addressed it maybe enough. Just that last element that was in the question was about personal characteristics. And I would say in what I've seen, almost I'd say sadly, even there, you don't get much help. In other words, you could be the most sort of saintly kind of person. And I'm afraid I don't think that means you're more likely to have kensho. You can be terribly devoted to the well-being of others rather than to yourself, and really, you know, a really, really good person with a very wise, kind heart. And I'm sorry to say that I don't think that means we're more likely to experience kensho. It's a law unto itself. It's I don't really know that. I think certainly in the Zen tradition, nobody would, as far as I've been taught and have read, nobody seems to be claiming that they can sort of predict, you know, who it's going to happen to. Occasionally stories of somebody coming to a great master and the master having a sense that this person has got something going on that's really kind of helpful for the dharma, but not saying, oh, you're about to have some great experience or you will do so. Okay, I'm going to go on to another question. You mentioned in a recent talk the true self. While Buddhism seems to focus on no self, and true self is the focus of Vedanta, it seems to me that they are the same thing. How do you feel about that? Oh man, yes. Well, yeah, I mean, again, that's a great matter. I mean, it's a great matter. I mean, what Yamada Cohen Roshi says in his wonderful book that I strongly encourage you to read if you haven't, Zen, the Authentic Gate, he says that kensho, which is, you know, you could say sort of dropping into, well, he calls it finding your true self. But what he says that is discovering in your own first-hand vivid experience, either that your own self is totally empty, meaning gone. It's also totally infinite. And it's also just one all-inclusive reality. Now, those are sort of three aspects of the what Zen calls the original face. The original face that you had before not just you were born, but even your parents were born. It's a famous koan. What is your original face from before even your parents were born? It means never mind from before the time you were born. Even before you were born, you had an original face. Even before your parents were born, you had that original face. What is it? So Yamada Cohen is saying that original face has these sort of three aspects, as he's putting it. Nothing at all. Totally one, all-inclusivity. One all-encompassing, non-separateness. And thirdly, infinite. So in a way, you know, he would be seeming this question that, you know, can you distinguish between no self and quote unquote true self? And it would seem, I don't know quite enough about Vedanta to know what they mean when they say true self. I assume they're pointing to an experience, to a sort of, you know, a different way of experiencing this moment. But whether they consider that a thing, a something, or whether they consider it an extraordinary, marvelous absence? I don't really know. You see, because I think in the way Yamato Koen Roshi was expressing it, it's even though it's infinite, it's absent, it's nothing. Even though it's all one, actually, it's nothing. And so far, I only mentioned he's saying that about our sense of self. He's also saying that the other way kensho shows up is that the world itself, or anything in the world, has these same precise three characteristics. Is any one thing is infinite. You know, whether it's just the hand of your clock, little hand is infinite, or if it's even your whole room, infinite, or if it's a mountain range, that too is infinite. And at the same time, it's also completely gone. And at the same time, it's also completely all-inclusive. So even the little tip of the hand of your watch, of your clock, is actually everything. You can't think this stuff through. Don't even try. Don't even think about thinking it through. The point is to experience it. And when you experience it, you're like, whoa, you have no doubt about it. So I'm sorry to say, I'm not sure of the answer to this question about the Vedanta true self and the sort of Zen or Buddhist no self. I don't know that. Does anybody really know, when we're getting down to deep into the mystery of what we are, can we really draw firm boundaries? I don't really know. You know, I'm trying to, in this thing I've been talking about with these 4 levels, I'm trying to at least sort of structure a little bit sort of different avenues of practice that I think can help a bit conceptually in what we're doing, and also may help us get our terminology a little bit clearer. Because, you can read the word awakening, meaning realizing why you go to the freezer at night for ice cream. And it's not anything like what Zen means by awakening. But it's some kind of realizing something about my habits, my emotional patterns or something. Sometimes people will refer to those things as awakenings. Well, so we need a little bit of terminological clarity, which I've been trying to develop a bit. But anyway, let's see, next question. Being borderless, at one with sound, in me or outside of me, the same. Any help experiencing this? See, I thought this was describing what someone was feeling, but they're saying, in me or outside of me, the same, meaning, and then any help experiencing this. So the meaning, can you help me to sense being borderless at one with sound? Well, I'm surprised by this question in the sense that I didn't say be one with sound. I was just asking us all to explore whether sounds seem to be arising externally or not. And so to me, it sounds like somebody's having a taste of what it's like when that boundary is getting a little bit less distinct. I mean, well, we'll be doing more of this in coming events, like in the weekend retreat. I want to be doing a bit more of exploring ways of tasting, where do we begin and end. Yeah, okay, here's another one. can you say something about the subconscious and the universal subconscious? Is it real? If there is no self, who has a subconscious? Or is the subconsciousness of the or is it the subconsciousness of the universe? Is it part of the mystery? Wow. Well, I don't feel qualified, really. I mean, I could say that this is a question about the same thing I was just talking about, these sort of different levels, because, yeah, we, on this first level, we are working with, in a sense, our sort of normal self. We're working with our normally sort of self-defined, kind of dualistic sense of self. Jung said there was the collective unconscious he famously talked about. He seemed to believe that there's our ordinary consciousness, there's subconscious, which would be prompting us to do things unbidden. The other day, I was noticing that I had a song that kept coming into my mind. And the title of the song and the refrain of it is actually a name. And I sort of kept having this chorus of the song, there's this name coming up in my mind. And actually, the penny suddenly dropped. It was the name of somebody in our larger family who was in intensive care with coronavirus in Europe. And she's out now. But it was my subconscious, was more conscious of her plight than I actually was moment by moment. So this song kept coming up. To me, that's subconscious at work. The universal or the collective unconscious, I mean, I think that the idea is that there's a level of our psyche where it stops being so personal. And I mean, I've talked about this a little bit at times with people. I think it's where we're really, rather like I was talking about today, actually, with this second level of practice, where we're becoming more open to archetypal energies, where there's this would be the zone of our experience where the personal psyche can open to this more sort of mythological realm. I don't mean, by mythological, I don't mean literally about myths. I mean more the kind of world that myths come from. Very deep narratives that have stood the test of multiple phases of human history, because they've got wisdom for us. But that's still dualistic, though. That we're still in a dualistic condition there, where there's a me and there's other forces and powers and entities that can, in some way interact or influence me. Good, fine, great, but it is still dualistic. So we're not quite down at the bottom of things there. Okay, just a bit more. Famous advantage statement. Wisdom tells me I am nothing. Love tells me I am everything. I love that. I mean, actually, I know that as a statement of that marvelous guy, Sri Nisargadatta. So when I look inside and see I am nothing, that's wisdom. When I look outside and see I am everything, that's love. That's how I know that quote. I love it, and it seems totally on track with our Zen way. Thank you. Letting, earlier you said letting now be as it is more, be as it is more and more deeply. really not trying to change anything. How can that kind of allowing or surrender be squared with the effort of breath practice, which might seem dualistic? The allowing and the effort, how do these relate? Well, this is a great, really great sort of in the trenches practice question. Yeah, and you know, it is, when I'm giving sort of instructions like that, you either tune them out or just sort of go with them and drop what your normal practice is, so that you're not caught between the two in some way. I mean, you know, the way that this actually can match with breath practice is simply that, well, we're just letting each breath be exactly what it is. This sensation of breath entering, sensation of breath leaving, sensation of body filling, sensation of body emptying, of rising, of falling, just letting it be. Now, I think there's an implicit question in here, more, which may be more to the point, is like, well, what about my attention? I'm trying to train my attention on that. Well, yes, that's one way that breath practice can be done. But there is another way that is much more receptive. It's not really modeled, the model isn't beaming the laser of attention on the breath. The model or the sort of analogy or something in the mind would be more letting the breath come, letting the breath go, in a wide openness. It's like what cameras used to have, you know, narrow aperture, wide aperture. Sometimes we want the narrow to focus the beam of awareness into a beam of attention. Sometimes we want broad, open awareness that is not narrow. And I think part of our practice, you know, development for each of us is learning, really, that which is it to be, which is the helpful one right now. You know, we may have been trying the laser approach for years and getting frustrated, or sometimes getting deeply and comfortably sort of relaxed and settled, absorbed, but often getting frustrated, and why is it I can't maintain it like I did yesterday or earlier today even, that sort of thing. So at those times, the appropriate thing is to go the other way, into the receptive mode. You know, take it, you know, lay back a bit, relax a bit, let the breath come and show itself to you. And it may not, fine. Just let yourself be in a loose, drifting kind of mode for a while. And you will probably come to more settledness in the moment through allowing yourself to be as you are. Okay, so I'm gonna just, there's one more question actually here, which was about these 4 levels, but I think I'm gonna save that. The reason I want to save it is because the weekend retreat that we've got coming up in 2 weeks' time, I'm planning to really use those 4, and it's really been sort of taking shape in my mind a little bit. How sometimes I've talked about original love, which I think is really somehow the sort of basis of what kensho is as well. It's finding this original love right down at the root of everything. And I'm realizing that these sort of 4 levels mentioned will be aspects of that, ways of opening to that. 3 of them sort of pre-kensho, so to speak, or, you know, or adjunct, alongside, you know, helpful, whether or not you've experienced kensho. Well, we are at the end of our time together, I want to say a big thank you to everybody for coming.